As you know, I went to UM 87 to 91. I was telling Coach off the air, I went to UM 87 to 91, so I owe you a little thanks for all the enjoyment you gave me. And he said, yeah, we had a little bit of success back then. I said, yeah, a little bit of an understatement there.
Well,
but,
you enjoyed it, but I tell you what, I enjoyed it even more.
Well, I enjoyed it plenty. No joke.
I used to say the best time of my life was really in my 5 years at University of Miami, even more so than winning Super Bowls. But the best time of my life right now. I mean, I'm loving it right now.
Well, we know, Coach. Good. We see all the pictures of the fish. We know.
We're going to talk some fish. So Jimmy Johnson is with us, and obviously South Florida legend. He goes without introduction. And I was saying earlier, if there's anyone who loves to fish more than Crowder, it's Jimmy Johnson. But the 13th annual Jimmy Johnson Championship Fishing Week is March 5th through 9th. So that's next Tuesday through Saturday. And you can get all the tournament info at jjfishweek.com. And from what I read, the stakes are high. It's the world's richest guaranteed tournament with a $1 million guarantee. It's the longest running $1 million guaranteed tournament in sports fish history. And I'm guessing this draws some serious fishermen and fisherwomen to the event. And I don't know, but I'm guessing this is something that you look forward to every year.
Yeah, we really have a good time with it. I was talking to Michael Jordan here just about 2 weeks ago, and Michael has fished in our tournament for the last 5 or 6 years, both the tournament in Florida and the tournament in Atlantic City. And actually, Dustin Johnson, the golfer, he won our tournament here in Florida last year. So we've got a lot of celebrities. We've got a lot of big-time fishermen. But now we got Channing Crowder.
Wait a second. You know, Crowder's in the same company as Dustin Johnson and Michael Jordan?
Hey, I've got something in common with him. In his many gigs that he's on the road doing, he's on Inside the NFL. Yes. Well, I did Inside the NFL 30 years ago with Nick Bonaconte, Lynn Dawson, and Chris Collinsworth. So we both have something in common.
Yes, Coach, and I'm just trying to follow your footsteps. You ain't got me by 30 years, but I'm trying to follow those footsteps. Yeah, Hawk, I'll tell you about this tournament. A couple years ago, I was like, I had me a Grady White, a little 30-foot Grady White. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go enter the tournament. And when I saw the boats out there in the marina, I said, yeah, let me just go catch a couple snapper and head home. I don't have a chance.
But Jenny, we've changed it around a little bit. There's 3 options now. So, they've got a little bit smaller group, that can be meat fishing. You got the sailfish tournament. Depends on how you enter. But you can go to jjfishweek.com, find out all the different options about the tournament. We've given out, I think, more than 12 or $13 million in prize money here the last so many years. So you got a chance to win a bunch of money, Channing.
Yes. I'm actually fishing with some sponsors because I'm going to be a part of it. I'm going to be hosting some stuff throughout the week because it's, hey, Hawk, most people have a day tournament, maybe 2 days. This is the JJ Fish Week. It starts, Wednesday, it goes through Sunday. It's amazing.
Actually, there's so many different things going on, parties. They have, like on Saturday, there's a swag where they go through the hotel and there's prizes and there's gifts that I think would rival the Oscars as far as the gifts that they get. Everybody in the tournament. It's fabulous. And then there's a huge party Saturday night there at the Hard Rock. So we have a great time.
Crowder, you get to go to the swag room?
Yes, I'm going to be in the swag room.
You got to get Michael Jordan to try that Crowder powder.
That's what I'm doing. I'm giving out the Crowder powder. I'm hanging out with all the people like Jimmy Johnson. Hey, Coach, I still tell a funny story about you. When the Big Chill wasn't as big as it is now because y'all had a heck of a renovation.
Right.
I was fishing down in Island Mirada out of Whale Harbor. And I'm coming up, and I used to always stop at the Big Chill and grab food before you get on the road back to Davie. And you're sitting there at the bar. And I'm like, I'm going to go say hey to Coach. Go over. We have a conversation. We're talking about football, talking about the Dolphins. And you asked me how'd I do. And I'm cocky. I was like, yeah, Coach. I got an 18-pound dolphin in the cooler. You kind of smiled. and one of your fishing buddies went out to your boat and you pulled out like a 45-pounder. And you kind of winked at me and was like, yeah, Crowder, that's a fish there. And I said, okay. Yeah.
Show him how it's done.
When you live right here on the ocean, you got a lot of opportunity to catch some fish.
And you can.
Now, how do you approach, though, a guy like Crowder comes to the bar, it's your restaurant, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, and he orders a couple drinks, some potato skins or nachos. Will you pick up the tab because it's your restaurant? Because Kim Bocamper famously, we've hung out with him at his restaurant. That dude will not give you 10% off of anything. I want to know how Jimmy Johnson does it when a guy like Crowder's there.
Well, I tell you, the arrangement I made with the Big Chill back, about 15 years ago, I said, listen, I have a lot of people come down and talk. I had John Madden's son and grandson a couple of days ago. Belichick and his girlfriend came down last week or so. And I've had owners and coaches, and there's no telling how many celebrities have come down to the Keys. I don't know if they want to see me or they just want to come to the Keys fishing. But I usually pick up the tab once we're in the Big Chill. But I don't think I picked up your tab.
No, Coach, I wouldn't let you. I was so excited to talk to you. I was starstruck. So when the bill came, I shakingly put my little credit card across there. It might have been insufficient funds, but I was going to try to pay.
I'll pick it up the next time, I promise.
I appreciate it, Coach.
That is great. Jimmy Johnson is with us. Again, if you do want information about the fishing week, it's jjfishweek.com. And I want to talk more about it, but I want to ask you a Dolphins question or two, Miami Dolphins. I believe that I think in a short window of time, the Dolphins will announce a long-term extension for Tua. I believe we're right on the doorstep of that. I'm a big Tua fan. Crowder's a big Tua fan. Solana's a Tua fan, maybe not as much as we are, but there's, a wide variety of Dolphins fans when it comes to opinions on Tua. So when he gets this extension, what should Dolphins fans' reaction be?
Well, yeah, they should be excited. One of my buddies, one of my best friends there on the show, Fox NFL Sunday, Terry Bradshaw, studies these quarterbacks. We watch college football all day Saturday, and then, of course, obviously, we see all the professional games. And he loves Tua. I know Mike McDaniel, he loves Tua. And, he stayed healthy this year, and franchise quarterbacks are hard to find. I think with their style of offense, with the personnel that they have, Tua's extremely productive. If they hadn't had the injuries, both in the offensive line and on defense, there's no telling they could have gone a lot further this year. But I'm happy for Tua. I'm happy that he's with the Dolphins.
And Coach, speaking of the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel, that new age coach, this new age of football, because you used to run the football 42 times a game. Nowadays it's all shotgun, it's all RPO. Do you like where the game is now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Channing, I think things change over the years, and I think the really good coaches change with it. I think because of the rule changes, Belichick and I have talked about this a bunch. I used to say, hey, the most important player on your football team is your starting quarterback. And then after that, you talk about the pass rushers or the defensive backs, et cetera. I said the second most important person on your team is a backup quarterback, because it's all about the passing game. You can't hit the receivers going across the middle. You barely can hit the quarterback. And so it's all about throwing the football. And the other thing is, the shelf life, for a running back nowadays is about 2 or 3 years you're going to get out of him. And so people really just don't run the football that much, unless it's just a draw play or, something wide open. So your quarterback and your receivers are so important. And I think that's how McDaniel has adjusted this game for their style. And I think he's done a great job.
Speaking of Mike McDaniel, do you marvel because you had a way that you approached coaching? And we've had Rondé Gadsden on the show a million times. He loved to tell us stories. So you look at Mike McDaniel, if you watch, Hard Knocks in season, or you see him at the press conferences, his style of coaching, the relationship that he has with players is completely different than it used to be. Do you marvel at it, you think to yourself, because even like college coaching, I can ask you about Mario Cristobal and the way that college has changed with NIL, but do you look at Mike McDaniel and say, wow, I don't know if I'd be capable of that?
I think the good thing about him, he's genuine. That's his personality. That's the way he is, individually. And so he's not trying to be somebody that he's not. And the players can see that and they relate to that. Every coach is not that way, but everybody, every coach has got to have his own different style, and not one style works. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and there's a lot of different ways to coach football. As long as you have respect and credibility, and as long as the players understand that you're doing something to make them better, because they want to get better, they want to make more money, they want to have a bigger contract, they want to win games. And if you do that for them, hey, they'll respect you and they'll do whatever you ask them to do.
Hey, Coach, I don't know if you can coach these new age players now, because we've heard stories that. Are you smiling now? We heard stories that you get after people. I don't know if you can step back on the sideline.
John Madden's son yesterday asked me this. His grandson is the coach at Michigan. They wanted to talk about coaching, and he said, "Is there any kind of mistakes that you've talked to all these coaches over the years that maybe they took it the wrong way?" And I said, one that maybe was a little different. Urban Meyer spent some time with me here, and I said, I come across as being really a hard ass, and really, really driving on these players, which I was at times. We lost a game against Washington, and it was a meaningless game. We'd already had the playoffs wrapped up. And the flight attendant came and started to serve the meal. I said, no, you ain't serving the meal. They don't deserve to eat. They didn't play well enough to eat. So I said, you just sat down the entire flight. Now, the players were a little bit upset at me because they didn't get any food going home. And Dave Wanstead came in and asked, he said, Coach, he said, weren't you a little bit hard on them? I said, listen, they understand if we win, they can do anything. They can hoop and holler and do whatever. But if we lose, I want them to be sick to their stomach. I want them to be nauseated. I want them to hurt. I don't care if they hate me. I want to make an impact on them that if they lose, I'm not going to accept it. And so, hey, Urban tried to be the hard ass all the time, there in Jacksonville. And, there's a lot of times, I'd hug Charles Haley around the neck, tell him I love him. But then the next day I might be cussing him out because he wasn't doing what I asked him to do. So I think you got to do a little bit of both. But the one thing in professional football, as opposed to college football, in college football, those guys would run through the wall. They'd do whatever I ask them to do. But in professional football, there's got to be more one-on-one interaction with the players. And you've got to sell the player one-on-one. And I had lots of meetings with all of my players in my office saying, hey, here's how we got to do things. And so, the image of me being a hard ass, I think that's a little bit skewed because I loved them up just as much as I screamed at them.
Coach, getting back to South Florida specifically for a second, we saw magical runs in the Heat and Panthers getting to the respective finals last season. This year, we got a taste of a Dolphins run. I know it didn't end up working out in the long run, but what's it like? Because you were here at the top of some of the best runs in South Florida in football. What's it like when this city, because we always talk about, is this a hockey town or a basketball town with the Heat success? But I feel, and I think you'll agree with me, this will always be a football town. What's it like in this city, in Miami and South Florida, when the Dolphins or the Canes are at their best?
Well, I think if you really look at it, every city is a football town. Football is king. I mean, you look at the visibility of football and our ratings are through the roof every single year. Everybody says, hey, it's going to be too much football. No, they just keep getting better and better and better. And we dominate the ratings, against all other sports. And so when football's winning, hey, you are king. I used to have a radio show of my own on Thursday nights, man, and I'd sit up there and I'd have me a cold beer and we'd laugh and cut up. And, man, that place was packed. Jerry Jones asked, he said, when I went to the Cowboys, he said, you want to have one of those radio shows like you had out in public? I said, no. I said, this team had been at the worst record in the NFL the last 3 years. I don't think I want to go in public until we start winning. When you're winning, it is fun.
This place is insane when hurricanes or dolphins. It is just it's a completely different animal. Jimmy Johnson is with us, and again, he's got this big fishing tournament. It's a fishing week, and the website, if you want info, is jjsfishweek.com. It's the 13th annual Jimmy Johnson Championship Fishing Week, and it starts Tuesday, March 5th, and runs through Saturday. And there's a ton of events. Crowder's going to be part of it. I'm going to ask you about the Hurricanes, too, before we end up running out of time, which is what would a message be for Hurricanes fans? There's been 2 seasons of Mario Cristobal. How do you think he's been doing, and what should fair expectations be? Because people like me who went to the U in the late 80s, we have different expectations of what the Canes program should be.
Well, although I had a couple of disappointments last year, I think the one thing that Cristobal is doing is he's recruiting extremely well. And in college football, that's the name of the game. If you've got the best players in college football, just like if you're Alabama, Georgia, whatever, you're going to dominate because, when I was at University of Miami, we had so many good players. My wife, Rhonda, could have won 8 or 9 at least, and so the key is getting good players in college football. Now, professional football is a completely different story, because of parity there and because it's pretty well even. So you got to play well every single week to win. But in college football, get the best players.
And Coach, it's easy to say, but you recruited at the college level All-Americans. You drafted in late rounds Hall of Famers. Why can't people draft and acquire talent like that? Is there a trick to it?
There's so many different opinions. I talk to people, they come down here and I said, maybe the most important person in professional football on a franchise is your talent evaluator. Now, it may be your head coach, it may be your general manager, it may be your personnel director. But bringing in the talent, being able to evaluate the talent, not just the way they play today, but being able to predict how they're going to play 3 or 4 years from now. Like my first 4 picks at the Dallas Cowboys were all academic All-Americans. Intelligence is the number one thing for me. But, Troy was my first pick. My second pick was Daryl Johnston. My third pick was Mark Stepnoski. My 4th pick was Tony Tolbert. All 4 of them ended up being Pro Bowlers or even Hall of Famers. I've actually got 17 players that I have recruited, drafted, or coached that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so, evaluating talent is a key. And again, when I say evaluating talent, not the way they played their senior year in college, but being able to predict if they're going to get better and better and better and be a great player 3 or 4 years down the road.
That is a gift. Not everyone can do it, which is why there's very few people in the Ring of Honor, because you have to be very special at something like that. Why? I'll bring it back to fishing here at the end. Why do you love fishing so much? Is it the camaraderie, or is it do you enjoy fishing on your own? The solitude, like which part of fishing do you love?
It's so peaceful. And, I actually will go fishing, used to, not as much anymore, but I used to fish by myself probably 75, 80% of the time. Now I've got a couple of buddies. One's 84 years old and he can't hear. And one's 79 and he doesn't talk. And the 3 of us have a great time out there fishing. We never say a word. Everybody knows his role. And we'll go out there and we will fish and we won't say a word. And then we'll have a couple of beers. But then we'll come back and jump in the pool and have us a Papa's Pilar and a little Diet Coke, and then we'll talk. But, it's so peaceful for me to be out on the water. I love being on the water. And then every now and then you get some excitement catching a big fish.
Hey, Coach, have you ever tapped out fighting a fish? Because when I'm down in the Keys, we go to the humps. And if guys are big football dudes talking trash, we go out and we hook them out on one of them big amberjacks.
Yeah, you tie him onto a Volkswagen
and try to get him to reel that thing up 250.
Yeah, Crowder, let me just tell you, we went to the hump one time, and we were doing some butterfly jigs at that time, and we catch tuna and Amico jacks and stuff. And so we saw the bunch of tuna underneath. And so one of my buddies, the one that really doesn't talk very much, he said, "Hey, let me throw a butterfly jig down here on the hump." And he hooked onto one of those amberjacks. Oh, and he was just sweating and trying to fight that thing. We were just laughing our rear end off. He didn't tap out. He finally got in, but he was done for the day.
Yes,
You ever
sir.
tap out, Crowder? Ever tap out on fish?
No, I gotta finish people's fish. I just can't do it. My pride won't let me do it. I've stopped reeling and had somebody pour a bottle of water on my head, but I have never tapped out.
Now, I did when I was fishing for tuna, yellowfin tuna down outside of Venice, Louisiana. I had to hand the reel a couple of times. This was like when I was 79 years old. Bradshaw helped me a little bit on one of the fish, but I've actually caught 5 blue marlin here in the Keys fishing by myself, and actually, got them to the boat, released 4 of them. One of them died, so I kept it. But I've caught 5 blue marlin fishing by myself here in the Keys.
That's impressive.
Man.
I'll try to bring fishing back around to a question I got to ask. You brought up Charles Haley earlier, talking about hugging Charles Haley. Coach, I have a podcast, and he was on my podcast.
He is a trip.
Coach, he's a trip. That's a good way to put it. He is one of the most intimidating human beings I've ever stood in the room with. Is there anybody you coach that's more intimidating than Charles?
He came about that far from whipping my rear end. We're playing the Vikings, and we flopped around. We won the game, but we flopped around. And so we go back in the locker room, and I was just wearing those players out. Well, he was talking to his buddies. He was late getting to the locker room. He's banging on the door. So, he knew that I was going to be upset that he was late. So he went to the very back of the locker room. And I was talking to the team. He was way in the back, like 30 yards away. I said, "Charles, I'm not going to say exactly what I said, but I said, "Charles, you get your rear end up here." And he kind of stared at me. I said, "You get your rear end up here." I said, "I'm talking to you. You get on up here." He came about that far from my face. He said, "This close enough?" I said, "Yeah, that's close enough." I knew he was going to slug me.
That's great.
That's a great story.
When he walked in the room at the podcast, I start messing with him because he doesn't dress up nice. He still had Dallas Cowboy issued shorts on.
Right.
From when he doesn't dress up, he doesn't wear lotion. He's just a big old country dude.
Right.
So I start kind of making fun of him, messing with him. And he looks at me and he was like, "Hey," he looked at my buddy, said, "Hey, who's this woman? This woman over here with the long hair." And he called me the woman with the long hair our entire show. And wouldn't bat an eye. I was like, "Yeah, I can't say nothing to Charles."
He's my guy. I love the guy. I mean, after we had a couple of run-ins, after that, and we were as close as could be. He's a special individual.
Yep.
Jimmy Johnson. So Crowder will be part of it, and anyone can participate. Although it's kind of a big deal if Michael Jordan's there. So, like Crowder said, if you're pulling up on the old dinghy, perhaps you turn back around and you hit the Publix fish aisle. But
don't bring any cane poles, I promise you.
Well, that counts out your dad, Crowder. That counts out Randy. Jimmy Johnson's 13th annual Jimmy Johnson's Championship Fishing Week, March 5th through the 9th. Next Tuesday through Saturday. All the tournament information can be found at jjfishweek.com. Coach, thank you for making time for us. Thank you for sharing stories, and good luck out there in the tournament.
All right. Enjoy talking to you guys.